Awesome. Well, welcome everyone. Like I said, we're going to get started in a couple of minutes. We're just waiting for everyone to get into the room. Whoever is trickling in, welcome to the event. So before we do get started, I just want to mention we are recording this event and we will be posting it at the Transfer Student Success Center YouTube channel. So if everyone is comfortable with having your camera on or off, that's completely up to you. But I did want to just briefly make that note. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and just get started. I want to introduce myself really briefly. My name is Jesus Orozco. I use he, him, his pronouns, and I will be the facilitator for this event. I am a senior humanities and communications major with a concentration in legal studies and a minor in sociology. And I am a first generation college student. I'm also involved in different organizations on campus. I'm part of TRIO, which is a program that supports first-gen students in academic, personal, and professional growth. Yay, TRIO. I'm the vice president of the Law Society, which is a student-led organization for those interested in law. I'm also involved with the Autocross Culture Center, the Diversity Center, and I'm involved with the Undergraduate Research Opportunity Center. I'm a McNair Scholar. And something to know, I was recently awarded the CSU Sally Casanova Predoctoral Scholarship. So I'm very much excited to be applying to grad school and learning from the panelists. So this event is titled First Gen Voices, Reflections on Grad School Preparation and Career Connections. And so today we'll be hearing from different CSU faculty, staff, and recent alumni on their motivations for attending, preparing for, and persisting in a grad degree program. This event is a kickoff event that launches a series of campus-wide grad school preparation workshops and different information sessions that will help make you competitive for applying to the next step in your professional career. I would like to acknowledge that this event is sponsored by the Cooperative Learning Center, the METAS grant, the Transfer Student Success Center, and the Undergraduate Research Opportunity Center. So really briefly, I do want to give a round of applause and say thank you to everyone who made this event possible. Awesome. So just some housekeeping. I do want to mention that this event is recorded, like I said at the beginning, but also kind of give you like a brief overview of the way that this is going to work. So from 4 to 4:45, we'll be doing a panel discussion. And from 4:45 till 5:15, we'll have an optional Q&A. And during the session, we ask if you have any questions during the discussion to please wait until we get to the Q&A portion. And if you'd like, you can unmute yourself or ask your question in the chat, and I'll get to that. Awesome. So we're going to go ahead and just get started and scroll. If you want, Jacinto, you can scroll through the slides just to give who the panelists will be. But panelists, please introduce yourself and your position on campus or off campus.
Hello, everyone. My name is Alexandria Cervantes. My pronouns are she, her. I completed my bachelor's in mathematics from California State University, Monterey Bay, where I was also in the undergraduate research program as a McNair Scholar. I had a lot of scholar titles. I don't remember them all anymore. And then TRIO SSS as well. So it's really wonderful to see some familiar faces. And I just finished this summer my master's in curriculum and instruction and math education at the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. And I'm currently a math and computer science teacher up in the Bay Area. So yeah, I'm so glad to be here. And I'm also in my classroom right now. So very excited to be here and, share space with you all.
Now we have Kenny.
Sorry, I was having some technical issues. Hi, everyone. My name is Kenny Garcia, he, him pronouns. I am an associate librarian, and I work mostly with the College of Health Sciences and Human Services. I got my BA in History and English from SUNY Binghamton. I got an MA in Liberal Studies from the University of Michigan Dearborn, and my library science degree from San Jose State. I guess that's all I'll kind of share for now, but I'll share some other things later.
Hi, everyone. My name is Renee Penelver. This is my second year as an assistant professor in the Department of Psychology. I am a cognitive psychologist. So I study how we process the information in the brain. Specifically, I study how bilingualism impacts the way we process information. I started off at a junior college in Bakersfield, California, right after high school. I graduated from there and then got my bachelor's degree in psychology at Cal State Bakersfield. And then I went to the University of Texas at El Paso on the border of Ciudad Juarez, Mexico, to study bilingualism. I'm really excited to be here today. And I think that is all I'll share for right now as well.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Rudy Medina, he, him, his. I did my BA in Human Communications here at CSUMB way back. After completing my degree, I went to the University of Utah to do my master's program in educational leadership and policy with an emphasis in student affairs. Really enjoyed working with students as an undergrad, so I continued that within my graduate program. After I finished my master's, I ended up staying in Salt Lake, working there at the Multicultural Center and continuing my education. So I've been working on my PhD and also in educational leadership and policy, and I hope to defend in the last week of November, first week of December. So we'll be finalizing that date probably this weekend. So.
Wow, awesome. Thank you, panelists. I think it's super interesting to have, grad students and students who are or have already graduated with their PhD and stuff. Jacinto, do you want to just share that really quickly once more? I do want to acknowledge that this event is a kickoff event for a series of events that we're going to be doing throughout this month. So if you're interested in attending any other event, this is a flyer. It's also on my raft, and I believe we'll be sharing these slides with those who attended the event. So just a little reminder or announcement for future events. So I'm going to go ahead and get started and begin some of the questions that we have. So the first question, I know a lot of you already touched on this when you introduced yourself, but what is your grad school origin story? And no particular order, whoever wants to start and talk about that a little bit further, please go ahead and begin.
I can start. So as I mentioned, I'm interested in bilingualism, and part of that reason is because I'm not, I don't consider myself bilingual, depends on which day you ask me. And it kind of was tormenting growing up in a place where a big Hispanic population and your friends are talking in English and Spanish, and you, or at least I did, I felt very embarrassed. And so one day I remember going home and asking my grandmother, who is bilingual, saying like, Grandma, why didn't you teach Mom? And now I don't know, and I'm really missing out. And she said, well, when I went to school, we were hit and told we were stupid when we spoke Spanish. And so I realized that it was really this form of institutional racism. And I just became fascinated by the topic. I ended up taking cognitive psychology classes, like everyone else, I thought I wanted to go into psychology to be a counselor. And then I took my first cognitive psychology class and learned more about bilingualism, more about why it's so hard for us to learn language after the age of 13 or when we hit puberty. There's a phenomenon known as critical periods. And so if we don't learn language before that time, it becomes not impossible, but very, very, very challenging. And so I realized why it was so hard for me to learn another language, but I was just completely fascinated by the topic. And for those of you thinking of grad school, I think it's really important to be fascinated by the topic, because if you're not, it's going to be a really hard process. And so I was really grateful to be able to study bilingualism pretty much in the premier place in the world to study it, which is, on the border of Ciudad Juarez, Mexico and El Paso, where over 85% of the population is English, Spanish bilingual. I mean, classes and statistics were taught in Spanish. So it was just a really cool place, a binational city. And I learned a lot about language, and I ended up learning a lot of Spanish there as well. So again, it depends on the day you ask me if I'm bilingual or not. But again, I love my topic, and I love sharing this information about cognition.
I guess I'll go next. So hi, everybody again. I'm Alexandria. So I guess my origin story came probably from when I was like younger, similar to Renee's. I hated math when I was young. And if you know me, you've heard this story a bunch of times, and I'm so sorry. But I hated math when I was little. I hated the dumb problems they used to give us in class, right? Like, go build this fence. How much fencing do they need, right? Or like, they just bought 90, oranges, find out this, right? And so like that kind of just snowballed into this thing of like, why don't people like math, right? Why don't, why did it take me so long to enjoy math? Because from my, K through 12 years, I really hated math. And then I got to my junior year of high school and I took calculus, and then I really loved calculus all of a sudden, right? So like, what happened and why did it take so long? And then I was meeting people in college who still hated math, right? And so I was really interested in how people understood math and how, we enjoy it or not enjoy it, et cetera, right? And it, similar to Renee, right? It ended up being a lot about institutional racism. And like, I've heard stories from my own grandmother where like, people, she hated math and kind of, that rubbed off on me, but she talked about how like she wasn't allowed to take math classes when she was in high school, right? Because she was just going to work in the fields anyways, right? So that on top of just the subject not being the most welcoming environment, right? There was a lot in Latinx and, Mexican. I'm from Salinas, I'm from a very like big agricultural area. There's a lot of like phenomena happening, right? And so I was really interested in all of it and why and how can we change it? What can we do to change it, right? And so I decided to go to the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign, and I worked in, my thesis was on like understanding the experiences of Latinx students, particularly STEM majors, and how they feel joy and connectedness in mathematics. And so yeah, that's kind of how I ended up. And now I'm a teacher, and now I get to apply all those things in my classroom. When my students come up to me and are like, Miss Cervantes, I hate math. And I'm like, ooh, hopefully we can fix that by the end of this semester. So yeah, so it's been an ever evolving thing. If you had talked to me maybe 2 years ago, I might've said something a little different about my grad school journey. But it's been a wild ride, but at the end of the day, like Renee said, you gotta really enjoy and have some passion about whatever you're going to study, right? Because you're going to be absorbed in it completely. You're going to be reading about it. You're going to be thinking about it. You're going to be talking to other people about it, right? So, so that was my thing. My thing was math. So.
I can go next. For myself, I'm a first gen from Salinas too. I think my graduate story is similar to even getting to CSUMB. Like, honestly, I feel like I didn't know much about applying. Working at the Multicultural Center at the University of Utah and helping students apply to graduate school, like sometimes I would look back and I'd be like, how did I end up in the graduate program? Because I did not do any of this. I didn't know much about the GRE. Luckily, the schools that I applied to didn't require it at the time. I think more schools are moving towards that. But I think for me, what I use my resources, or I use my support. There was a professor there were some professors from CSUMB that went to the University of Utah, and they recruited some students over there. Those students recruited more students. And then I was kind of like the third or fourth generation of like CSUMB graduates to be going to the University of Utah. So we had a little bit of a kind of pipeline going over there. And those folks really supported me through the application process and like reviewing my personal statement and so on. So I think without kind of that informal support from my peers, I don't know that I would have had the necessary tools to apply. So I'm always really grateful for that. And I think as you all think about applying, like, I would say use your resources. Feel free to contact me too if you ever need any support or any guidance or just advice in general with your application process. But I did not expect to be, if you would have asked me, why do you apply to Utah? Why do you go to Utah? I would have not known. But what I will say though is that they paid for my stuff. So they paid for my tuition. They gave me a job over there as a graduate student too. So I think that it was really like a good environment for me, not only to have that informal support in applying, but then also they took care of me when I was there.
So I'm also first gen student, and I just want to give a shout out to the EOP and McNair Scholars programs, because those are the two programs that really supported me as an undergrad. I didn't know like what to do after undergrad, and so just being in the McNair Scholars program really opened up opportunities for me to kind of think about even going to grad school. I think it like definitely they help help pay for GRE classes. There was a cohort that I can actually kind of talk to about applying to like different grad programs. And even though I didn't actually kind of go into a doctoral program, and I didn't start a master's program until a few years later, I still see that experience as kind of supporting me and kind of opening up to the idea of even going to like graduate school. I think like many others, you don't really wouldn't necessarily imagine going to like graduate school. It's kind of like you just go for your undergrad, and then the expectation is that you're done, you can start working. And I went to the University of Michigan Dearborn to help start the Center for Arab American Studies. And so I was going to I was in the master's program there as a way for me to kind of work as a graduate assistant for that program, but then also go to school at the same time. So it was a very unique opportunity that kind of came up, and it definitely kind of taught me. It's a unique program, just like Rudy said. It was a program where you didn't necessarily have to take the GRE exam to kind of get in, and it was a unique program where it was working adults that were interested in going back to school for their graduate program, and it really opened up the kind of it really supported me in kind of growing as a researcher, but also it was kind of tied to kind of working to help build this new center at the university. So that it's a very unique grad experience, and then also going back to school for a second master's for a library science degree. I think after that first graduate program, I went back home and was looking for jobs, and I got a job at the public library. I guess once you start working in libraries, you kind of see yourself continuing on. And so I moved to California, and I applied to the San Jose State program, which if there's anybody interested in librarianship, it's a great profession to be in. I love working as a librarian. And if folks are interested in the profession, please reach out to me of color in the profession. But that's my graduate school origin story.
Thank you all for sharing. I feel like it's very interesting to hear your guys' origin story and see how all of these different resources and programs have influenced that while being in those programs myself. But yeah, thank you for sharing. My next question is, what factors influenced your decision to apply or to attend a specific school, whether that was, money, family, program? And I know some of you have already touched on this with your origin story, but if anyone wants to elaborate on that a little bit further, please go for it.
Yeah, I think for me, what really propelled me into going was my mentor through the McNair Scholars Program. So I am a first-generation college student, first-generation graduate student, come from a working class background, come from a really poor, uneducated city, one of the least educated cities in the US, actually. And I actually never really saw myself going past junior college. It was just something to do. Like, I really loved school and I was really good at it, but that there was nothing else for me to do. It was just the next step. And I ended up going to CSU Bakersfield for a transfer student day. And I saw a woman holding a clipboard, and I was walking, and she smiled at me, and I smiled back, and she said, "Come over here. I want to tell you about the McNair Scholars Program." And she said, "Research." And of course I knew what the definition of research was, but I really didn't know. I knew overall what it meant, but I really didn't know what it entailed. And she said, "I want to talk to you about research. What's your major?" And I said, "Psychology." She asked me what my GPA was, and I told her. And she says, "Well, you know what, when you come here, you're going to do research with me and you're going to apply for this program." And I said, "Oh, well, I don't really know anyone that can write me letters of recommendation at my junior college, so I'm not sure that this is going to happen." She said, "No, you're going to work in my rat lab. You're going to learn about memory," and just told me all these things that I was going to do. And at that time, I had no clue that she was prepping me and leading the way for me to apply to graduate school. And so I ended up doing all those things. I actually didn't apply to the McNair Scholars Program because I didn't know who to ask to write my letters. And so she called me because I had put my number down on the sign-up sheet, and she said, "You're going to turn this in. I'm going to give you an extension." So I did, and then I was accepted into the McNair Scholars Program. I mean, I literally knew nothing about graduate school. Think about 0.0, starting from the bottom. And I remember even when I was applying to CSU Bakersfield from Bakersfield College, I knew I wanted to go there because I wanted to stay home. I wanted to be near family. Family is so important to all of us. So I knew that. And when I was applying, there were different routes for application. There was an undergrad application and a graduate application. They had a few graduate programs there. I didn't know the difference between those two. I thought it was two links to the same thing. That's how little I knew. Serendipitously, I applied to the right application, but it really was transformative. I would not be here today without a mentor, without her. And she's still my mentor. She wrote my letter of recommendation, one of them, you have to have 3, for this position to be an assistant professor here. So still very close. And I think my biggest recommendation for first generation students or anyone even interested in graduate school is you have to have a mentor. I don't think it's impossible to get through it without a mentor, but I mean, things are much easier if you do. And a mentor that you not only professionally connect with, but personally, I felt like she was a second mother. So I got really, really lucky with the mentorship I received. And she believed in me more than I did myself to do something and showed me the way. And then I got into my graduate program at UTEP. How I decided there was for 2 reasons. One of which, it was a premier school to study bilingualism. 2, she went there and got her PhD. I think someone else mentioned, Rudy might have mentioned like, oh, my mentors went, and that's how I knew about Utah. That's oftentimes how you find out about graduate programs. Your mentors can put in a good word for you. So I was so excited to go to UTEP, and I try to do the same thing with my students as well. So it's definitely a pay it forward situation.
Jesus, can you repeat the question again, please?
Yeah, so the question was, what factors influence your decision to apply or attend a specific school?
Thank you. I can go next. So I knew I wanted to study math stuff, right? Why people like math, why people don't like math, right? So I graduated from CSUMB in 2019, so fairly recently. And so I went to the TRIO program. I was in the TRIO program, the first day of school. And I went to Kirsty actually, and I was like, Kirsty, I want to be a doctor. I want to study this. I want my PhD. And she's like, yeah, you can do it. You know what I mean? Of course, you're amazing. And, and so that kind of helped jumpstart everything, right? My freshman year, I went on a grad school tour with TRIO, and I got all hyped up, right? I was like, ooh, you get to go to grad school and then you actually get to study what you want. That's what they said about undergrad. Not true, right? But that you actually get to study what you want, that's fantastic. You know what I mean? And so then, through TRIO, I was able to get a lot of support. And then, I applied to UROC and the McNair Scholars Program. And then we have Natasha, and she comes in, you know what I mean? And so, I get a lot of support from UROC, Natasha, McNair, Carla, trying to think about okay, what would be the best fit for you? What do you want to study in math education? What do different programs have? And I had no idea, similar to Renee, I didn't know what grad school meant. I didn't know what it meant, why you get a master's first or why you don't get a master's first, master's and PhD programs going into a PhD, right? And so through UROC, through TRIO, both of those programs helped me really plan myself into okay, these are all the possible schools I'd want to go to. Let me reach out to people, you know what I mean? So I ended up just emailing people hey, I'm Alexandria. I want to study math education. I've heard of you, I have a couple questions about a paper. And so I emailed I want to say 10 different people at 10 different universities, and they all got back to me, and they're like, Alexandria, so nice to meet you. Can we talk, right? And so I ended up talking to a bunch of people, and I got, I was there to see what they had to say and the way them and I kind of worked together, right? What was it like? Was it awkward? Because as you can tell, I like to talk a lot. And so I wanted an advisor who would be able to talk to me, and have patience with me and stuff like that. And so I ended up meeting my advisor from the University of Illinois that way. And immediately she's like, I want you to come work with me at Illinois. And I was like, okay, whatever. You know what I mean? I think I was in my junior year when this happened. And I'm from, like I said, I'm from Salinas. My family's in Salinas, right? I'm not going to go all the way to Illinois. And so I ended up applying to a bunch of programs, and I got different offers. Obviously I can't pay for my own, graduate program. And so I got a bunch of different offers with different money amounts and different, costs of living and stuff like that. And so Illinois ended up being the best choice with the funding options and the research I wanted to do. And so that's long story of how I ended up at the University of Illinois. And then I kind of moved to Illinois, but then like I came back home because of COVID. So did I really move to Illinois? So yeah.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing. And so because of time, I am going to move on to question number 3. And that question is, did you feel that you experienced imposter syndrome? What did that mean to you? And how did you overcome this? What kind of supports did you have to persist?
I can go if there's no one that has a response yet. I think I still, I know I still experience imposter syndrome, especially right now where I'm in my second year, and the beginning of your second year, you go up and you get reviewed by your department, your college, a university committee, the provost and the president, and they review all the work that you've done while you've started your job. So I think I don't know if it ever goes away, but it's something that I still experience. And how do I deal with that? I think what's really awesome is finding an amazing support of peers and colleagues. I have a peer who started with me in the psychology department here, and she's like, she always tells me, you're such a badass, or you're so cool, or you do this, or you do that. And those reminders are always so great because it doesn't feel like it in the moment. And so I think that you need a system of support, whether it be your family, your friends, your colleagues, your grad school buddies, your mentors. Those people are important, and those people, I hope, or should be the ones to help you think more of yourself when you're, when you're struggling with imposter syndrome.
Yeah, I think definitely yes. But I will say too that I think imposter syndrome is like a word that's constantly used in graduate school. But like I also feel like there's a component of like race in there that usually doesn't get talked about, and also social class. So I feel like I went to this big huge Research One institution. I remember like the orientation, right? I'm there from like this little town, Salinas, agricultural town, and then you had all these folks from everywhere in the U.S. I think our cohort was about 30 students, maybe 10 to 13 of them were from Utah. Everyone else was out of state. So it was pretty like intimidating. And I remember even like the classes, like I was so intimidated that first semester, like up until like maybe throughout, I'm still intimidated, but like that first like half of the semester, I was like super, like I didn't like talking in class. Half the time I felt like I didn't know what they were talking about because of the words that they were using. And so like I was just really intimidated, but I remember like at some point, right, and you start building your network there, you start talking to, you start building your community and so on. And I think around like that halfway point, I was just like, man, like half these people don't know what they're saying. Like they're just using all these words, but like I belong here too. So I think like that kind of realization like helped me, but I'll say it never kind of goes away, right? I think that again, like that racial and like social class component, gender components, all those kind of intersections, right? They're constantly always going to make you feel like sometimes you're not worthy, but you are. I think you like once you start kind of noticing all the power that you have, all the agency in those spaces, I think that can be kind of a powerful experience to kind of even disrupt those spaces too.
I just want to add to what Rudy said. I think what he's saying is on point. I think language is something that we all have to kind of try to figure out, especially in graduate school, that you're going to be kind of diving deep into kind of theory and the way that kind of language is used within theory to explain things. I think it takes a while for you to get to feel more comfortable kind of working with this and it's not necessarily new language, because it's stuff that we already know, but the way that it's kind of being used, that they're using new terminology to talk about things that we already know. So it's about kind of learning that new terminology to explain things, and that kind of takes time to kind of get settled. But know that you all deserve to be in graduate school. You all have the skill set to kind of achieve everything. And I'll just go back to what Renee said. Just try to find that support system to vent, to kind of like let out the frustrations of having these kind of strange experiences in the classroom, because you all deserve to be in that space. I think I saw this meme that was like, the only folks that should worry about imposter syndrome are the legacy students. The folks that actually got into the programs worked really hard to get in. So yeah.
Well, thank you everyone for sharing. So even though we're not finishing the session just yet, I do want to thank the panelists for your participation and just like everything you shared so far. So want to just give a round of applause if everyone wants to just use a little reaction to show how much we support everything that you guys are sharing with us. So very briefly, at 4:45, I do want to give everyone the opportunity, every participant to the event. If you have any questions, you're welcome to unmute yourself and put it in the chat. We will still continue with some Q&A, but just keep in mind that at 4:45, you're welcome to ask some of your own questions. So the next question that I'll ask is about funding. How did you figure out how to fund your grad school education? Did you have an assistantship to pay for grad school, or like how was that for you?
I made sure that I had an assistantship or a fellowship because, again, like I mentioned in my last answer, like I'm poor, like I don't have money to be spending on anything, even like the health insurance fee that they try to get us to pay, or like, like they say you're fully funded and then there's these like fun little fees on the side, right? So I like, when I was applying to graduate school, I made sure to ask about the funding. I'm like, listen, like, I'm so excited that, we're having this conversation, like I'm in this interview with you, whatever. But I need funding. And it's not like, oh, sometimes you'll have, you'll be able to work 20 hours a week for a semester, or sometimes you'll be able to work 10 hours. I was like, I need to be fully funded to come here and do my work. And so for the most part, like my advisors understood. There was one place I got into and they didn't have funding, but even the advisor was like, I'm finding you funding. That's what I'm in the process of doing right now. And then for Illinois, when I came in, I had funding a couple different ways. And still my advisor was like, I'm still applying to funding for you. So I made sure to make it like very known that I was not going to be paying for anything. Like I was going to transport myself there and move my stuff there. And then, they covered the rest, right? So I was just very upfront in the very beginning. And then I also kind of looked for extra things on the side too. So, you can apply for graduate fellowships before you commit to a grad school most often, and usually happens the fall you're applying to graduate school. So you can apply, the ones I applied to were the Ford Fellowship and then the National Science Foundation Research Fellowship, because I'm kind of in STEM education. And so those are some other opportunities. I didn't get any of the fellowship, but it was really good practice. And so then next time a funding opportunity came by, I had those like documents ready to go. So I could always apply for more. I also applied to like little scholarships. Like I feel like sometimes people feel like they can't apply to scholarships because they're mainly meant for undergrads, but you can still apply to scholarships as a graduate student. They're not going to cover your tuition like they would at CSUMB, but that'll be like your food money for the semester, or like your rent, right? Illinois was really cheap rent, so I was able to get my rent covered with the scholarship and stuff like that. So I was always looking for money, and always like, other thing I did was just like for survival was like, you know, I'd go to free food events, events that had free food. Obviously, it's different before COVID. And I take it to a Tupperware dish and like, you know, fill that stuff with all the food, the free food, you know what I mean? But you might as well, right? Like they're not funding your meal plan there, right? So just being like very prepared, you know, ask questions, make it known, and then like do things to save money along the way.
Well, I can go next. Ditto on the food. I remember when I was a master's student, I got added to so many listservs from trying to get free food. But yeah, I think like going back to like the imposter syndrome, like know your worth. Make them pay for you, you know, especially if you're trying to go out of state, like they need to be covering your funding, or at least part of your funding. I think for master students it's getting a little bit more difficult to be able to provide funding, but there's always kind of ways, even like they might not have funding, but there's always assistantships, like graduate assistantships where you can work somewhere on campus for 20 hours and get some type of tuition reduction. There's research assistantships and so on. So even if they're saying like no to funding, like you can always ask like, oh, do y'all have graduate assistantships? Like what do those entail? Like what would be the benefits that I would be receiving as a student? I think for myself, I received a graduate assistantship that covered all of my tuition. So I had to work 20 hours starting from like the beginning of August through December 15th, and then January, I think like the beginning of January through May 15th was like the contracts or whatever. So you were kind of committed to being there during that time. But yeah, I mean, for me, I was working for the orientation office, which is kind of weird too. Again, I'm a little poor kid from Salinas, and then I'm at the University of Utah working at the orientation, communicating with all these legacies and so on. So talk about imposter syndrome and not feeling like you were worthy at times, right? But again, like they really took care. I felt like they really took care of me, and then even like apart from that, you know, I met like when I first went to the visit, I'll say that like I got to meet with like one of the VPs for equity and diversity at that time. I got to meet with like the chair of the department. I got to meet with all these folks that were important to not just the university, but I mean, not just the department, but the university. And when I was there, like they knew who I was, right? I think my first semester, another VP was teaching one of my classes. So it was kind of cool in that sense that I always felt like folks were looking out for me, always presenting different types of opportunities for me. And yeah, and I always say like I felt like I wouldn't have had those opportunities if I would have gone somewhere else, right? Maybe, but I think that's what really kind of sold me at that time to go to the University of Utah.
Awesome. So I'm going to move on to the next question, which is how did you utilize your undergraduate experience to be successful in grad school, or even to get into grad school?
I think the most important thing was obtaining research experience. And so that helped me quite a bit. My initial research experience was in a neuroscience lab. So I worked investigating the long-term impact of enriched environments, and see, I still remember, in long-term memory in older adult rodents. And I very quickly realized I hated working with rats, and that I love the topic of memory, but that I just couldn't do it. You know, I'd got bitten, I had to get a tetanus shot, and all of that, all the stuff that goes with working in, you know, in a lab. And I told my mentor, I was terrified. I waited 2 months to tell her, like, I don't think I want to do this. I want to be a cognitive psychologist. And I was so terrified that I was just gonna, I don't know what I thought. And she was like, okay, let's get you situated in a cognitive psychology experience. So she helped me find another research experience at CSUB where I started to investigate the cognitive psychology research project. And because of that, and because of, she told me, make sure you're reading your stats work over the summer, and she would practice with me in terms of thinking about the stats. I mean, I felt really well prepared by the time that I started. UTEP, and UTEP is a very stats heavy school. I have a statistical minor basically for my graduate program. So I felt very well prepared. And I would not have been as prepared without those research experiences that I was afforded through the McNair program.
I feel like the research experiences prepared me for a little bit of a different reason. Obviously, I was able to come in and I knew what like qualitative research was, and a lot of the other grad students didn't. But the other thing was like time management. That was like the one thing that like was on my side. If you had met like undergraduate Alexandria, she was wild. Like she went hard. Like Natasha's laughing because she knows I applied to like a lot of scholarships. I had like 4 jobs, 5 jobs at a time. I never took a summer off. Like I went hard. And so that really helped, like having to manage all those things. And I commuted from like Salinas. And so having all those things happening at once in undergrad, like, you know, I was busy all the time. So then I get to grad school and then I'm like, wait, I have so much free time. All of a sudden, like my evenings were free, right? I was able to like do homework, like at the library, like just things I wasn't able to do in undergrad. And so having those time management skills, like was really, really nice. And I think, you know, doing undergraduate research during the school year and during the summers really helped, like forced me to learn how to time manage well. Even now as a teacher, you know, teachers are known for being overworked, but I'm chilling. Like, this is great. I'm having a great time. So that's definitely one of the things that like prepared me and was really important. I think the other thing that was really important was like similar to knowing your worth, like financially, but also like academically, right? So like the other fun fact about me is I had a really low GPA, like comparatively to other people in my program. And so I always felt like that imposter syndrome, right? Like, oh my gosh, like I only had this, you know, low GPA and these bad GRE scores, but like also I did, and I still had all these offers, I still had all this funding, and I still had like, I was still in the same position as people who went to like Ivy Leagues and whose mom and dad were PhDs too, you know what I mean? So I thought that was also really important, trying to like, you know, get over that imposter syndrome a little bit, but also recognizing your worth, and like, you're gonna very much need that in grad school because everybody's kind of trying to bring you down at some point, so.
There's 2 things that really had a big impact on me as an undergrad. The first thing was professors that kind of forced me to go into office hours. Like office hours is like bizarre thing that I was like, you want to talk to me one-on-one? And so it really gave me the experience of being able to kind of speak to my professor one-on-one, but also to be able to kind of have some kind of academic conversation with them, that it kind of prepares you to have similar conversations in graduate programs where you're kind of like diving deeper into like specific topics. And then the second thing was kind of having oh, and I'm not saying this because I'm a librarian, but going into the library, speaking to librarians, getting that research support from librarians to be able to you know, get the information that you need for your research topic. You know, my first time going into an academic librarian as a first-gen student, it was scary. My undergraduate library was like 4 or 5 stories tall, full of books, and like it could feel overwhelming. But luckily, because of the ELP program, the summer bridge actually had us speak to a librarian during the summer bridge program. So that kind of eased some of the anxiety of like going in and like asking for research help. But just being able to kind of have that experience really helped me as a graduate student, being able to ask for help for research help as a graduate student as well.
So there's a question in the chat. That question is, for those of you who took the GRE, what advice do you have to prepare for the exam, and did you take it more than once?
Like, my advice is like, study a little, but like get it done and move on. Like, it's probably, even though there's, you know, obviously it's required for some programs, it's probably like on your list of like personal statements, letter of recommendation, like GPA, research experience and stuff. Like GRE is probably at the bottom of that list. And just get it over with. Like, I took it twice. I regret taking it twice. Like, there was no reason I needed to take it twice. I think I got like 2 points higher. I was so mad. So just like study really, you know, try it a little hard, just study, you know, I know a lot of people who studied like really intensely. Obviously I was kind of like whatever about it, but like just do it and move on. Like, that should be the least of your worries as you're, you know, working on your graduate school, like packets and whatever. You know, you want to make sure your letters of recommendation are strong. You want to make sure your personal statement is like clean and sharp. And then you also want to like enjoy your last year of college, right? So the GRE, like, just like I said, study and then get it over with, and then don't think about it again.
I think the interesting thing about the next couple of years is that a lot of schools aren't going to have a GRE requirement because of COVID. So that's one thing to consider. And I know like my PhD program, they've completely, it's not a requirement. It's not going to be a requirement anymore at all. So that's one thing to consider. It's definitely not the most important piece. Research is. However, some schools, if you don't meet a certain baseline, they're not even going to consider you as an applicant. So those are like some of the UC schools, some of the UT schools, and I'm sure there are lots more. So that's one thing to think about. In terms of GRE, did I study? Yes, I studied a lot, and I did pretty well. However, I also took a GRE prep class that McNair scholars paid for, and it wasn't teaching the material, it was teaching the strategy, because you're timed. And I think that's the hardest part actually, is the timing. It's quick. And you're like, how did time go so fast? And when I took it, it's no longer this way, but when I took it, let's say you did the first question and you got it wrong, you went to a lower, like it was called computer adaptive, but you automatically got deducted points and it went to like a lower level. And it kept doing that throughout the way. So it was a really stressful time. I had to travel out of town to take it because Bakersfield, there was no place to take it. I had to go to Fresno. That was the closest place. It was like $250 at the time. And then you have to know where you're applying to, because right when you take it, they're going to ask you where you send it. If not, you have to pay extra. And it's just like so expensive. I'm very thankful. I like begged the McNair program to pay for it, and they did. So they paid for my GRE, and they gave me some money back, like reimbursement for my travel to go there. So McNair is just, I could talk so much about McNair. But I think it's dependent upon the school that you're applying to. But for the next couple of years, a lot of schools have waived this.
And Kenny dropped in the chat a resource for GRE, so thank you for that. I think that's really helpful for anyone interested in taking the GRE, like myself. So my next question is, what surprised you about grad school or being a grad student, and how was it different from your undergraduate experience?
You can go first, Alexandria.
Okay. I guess how like political it can be. I hoped, like, I guess I was just being naive, but I hoped that like the politicalness of being in school would not follow me to graduate school, because I found I found a mentor who I felt like was like akin to me, you know what I mean? Like we came from similar backgrounds, you know, all these things, right? And so, but I still had to deal with a lot of nonsense for no reason. And it gets tiring after a while, you know, to deal with that. And it's just people, you know, doing silly little things, you know what I mean? Putting up little gatekeeping, not sharing knowledge, right? And there was like, for an education program, you know, talking a lot about like social justice, there was some fishy things going on, you know what I mean? And so just like being mentally prepared for that, you know, and like knowing how to navigate that is really, really important. But so that's like the one of the things that surprised me was just that nonsense. But two, how I still had to take classes that I didn't want to take. Again, I was like promised that I could study whatever I want. And then I was still taking like stats classes. I was like, I left my math degree behind. Like, let me live, you know what I mean? So yeah, those are the two things.
I think I was most surprised. It's this, so graduate school is the start of your career. And I think I was most surprised by the interpersonal relationships that like your professors inviting you to go have a beer and talk about research, or going, you know, like that really kind of freaked me out because that hadn't happened before. But that's normal. You go and do things with them. You're their colleagues. They have you call them by their first name. And that was very, very challenging for me. I didn't call my research advisor by her first name until probably like 2 or 3 years ago, like after I graduated. And I think the other thing is I learned how important being likable is. And that kind of sucks, but like to think about overall, your work, can't even talk. Your work should be able to show. But really, I think the social capital of graduate school is really, really critical. And if people like you, you're going to do well. If people don't like you, it's going to be harder for you. And that was actually quite surprising for me. I was very lucky to have great mentors and a really great experience, but some people did not. They had awful experiences. And so if you ask me and another person, we could talk about the same program, but it will sound like 2 different programs. So I think the kind of social nature of things really surprised me.
I think for me, and I don't remember who mentioned this earlier, but I moved out of state to do my master's, and I felt like I had a lot more time. Like I wasn't as busy. I remember in my undergrad, I was always super stressed out. I remember probably my sophomore and junior year, or second and third year, I did really bad. My GPA dropped a lot because I was just trying to do everything. I've always had a hard time saying no. So being in graduate school, I think I really enjoyed the time that I had. I enjoyed being able to kind of build a schedule, to wake up early, which I used to not do, and you know, log in my hours and then go study at the library. It was the first time that I felt like I was utilizing the resources around campus, like the library. They used to have like a graduate room there. So even like going to different spaces, getting to learn more about not learn more about the city, but explore the city, and going to like different coffee shops, walking around to find locations to like study and read and stuff like that. Having time to read too, and not just like trying to skim through everything, and because you had to do all these different tasks throughout the day. So I felt like that was a big difference. Also the community I built. You know, I'm still pretty close to some of the folks that I met in my undergrad, but I also feel like the community I built in my graduate program, like the network, I'm really appreciative of it. And it wasn't just at the University of Utah, but like it extended to folks going to different universities too. That I feel like it was just a very kind of like rich experience for me, where I feel connected, even though like we're far away to all these different people.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing. So the last question to wrap up our panelist discussion is, what do you wish you would have known? What advice would you give your past self So sort of thinking it like if you can go back in some sort of grad school timeline, what would you do differently?
This is a really easy question for me. I wish I would have enjoyed it more. I was so preoccupied with graduating and wanting my PhD like ASAP. And that is the last time I'm challenged in different ways, of course, as a professor, but that was the last time I felt really kind of intellectually challenged the most. And that hasn't happened since. And there are so many experiences that I took for granted that just don't happen anymore. And I really miss them. And so I think that one of the things is just to enjoy it and not try to rush things. And I didn't rush anything, but again, I was just so, all I kept thinking about was that PhD and what I was going to do after. And although I really enjoy my life right now, I really miss graduate school.
Yeah, so when I started my PhD program, I remember being at another orientation, my second orientation, graduate school orientation story, but they were telling us how difficult it is once you finish your coursework and your ABD but dissertation. And I remember I was there with my friend and we were like, that's not gonna be us, like we're on this, we're gonna graduate in 5-6 years and we're gonna be done. And I was working full time. I had the option to do, I also had funding, but I kind of wanted to work at the time because it was doing something that I really felt passionate about. So my first 3 years, I was taking full-time courses, going to school and trying to kind of balance everything. So I was really busy. I maybe fell behind like a semester before finishing all my courses, and that was more because there was funding cuts and some of the classes got cut and then I had to wait to take them. And but I got to that point, and then after that I felt really burnt out that I started taking time. I wouldn't say time off because you're constantly working on stuff. You're doing research, you're doing other stuff like in conferences and so on. So I was doing all of that, but in terms of my dissertation and my work, it got really difficult to keep at it. And just find making space to write, making space to really take care of my own stuff in terms of my dissertation. And even once COVID hit, I felt it could have been a great time to I'm working from home and so on to continue, but it was really difficult. Burnout is real, so take care of yourselves. And yeah, so that would be my advice, just to kind of take care of yourselves and make a plan. And stick to that plan, even if it's well my partner, what she always tells me, and my mentor used to also tell me, but I never take their I always found it difficult to take that advice. It's just spend at least 5 to 10 minutes to write something, at the beginning of the day or at the end if you haven't worked on it all day, just to kind of keep your mind fresh on it. When I've done that, it's been really helpful, and I feel like I've done a lot of work when I'm just trying to do 5-10 minutes at least a day. I'm really pushing myself, because those 5-10 minutes, sometimes you get really into your writing and then you've been there for an hour, hour and a half, and you've just gotten lost. Or you start reading something really cool and you're like, oh, cool, and you just kind of get lost, right? So take that time, make time for your studies, but also make time for yourself.
I think I wish I would have taken more classes. I did stick to my degree path, and I did go out of my department quite often, but I wish I had done more of it. I love learning, and I love learning new things. I love reading. I love being a student. If I could be a student forever, I would. And only take classes forever, but not get a degree. You know what I mean? No, I'm good. I wish I'd taken more. I wish I would have taken more math, more advanced math classes. I wish I would have taken, more gender and women's studies classes, or ethnic studies, just diversifying my own thinking a lot more. Other than that, I don't think I have any regrets about. I think I did it pretty okay. So.
The only thing that I'll add is, as a fresh gen student and that need to, or that want to work while you're going to school, I wish I would have applied to graduate fellowships to be able so that I wouldn't necessarily have to work. I mean, that need is real, right? Like we have to pay bills, we have to be able to do other things, and then also go to school. But I think having like funding not just to support the tuition, but living expenses, I think really helps. Like what like Rudy was said, you know, giving yourself time to kind of um, go through the readings, your research projects. So that's just one bit of advice.
Well, lastly, thank you seriously to all the panelists and everyone who made this event possible. I feel like I've already gained a lot of advice and, you know, just learning from your guys' experience and what it's like to go to grad school as a first gen college student. But yeah, thank you everyone for being here, for participating in the event, which was sponsored by the Cooperative Learning Center, the METAS grant, the Transfer Student Success Center, and the Undergraduate Research Opportunity Center. In the chat, Valerie has put the different events that we'll be hosting. So if you're interested in any of those events, it's all in the chat. Yeah, if anyone has any questions or any final remarks, please do so.
I just want to say, just a reminder, like you're doing this grad school work for yourself at the end of the day, right? It's for you. It's because you want to, you know, learn more. You want to like, you know, explore a different career path or something like that. And you have like complete control over what that looks like, right? So even if you have this like, you know, big grand plan, right? Things might change, like a little pandemic might hit or something, you know what I mean? So, and make you reevaluate everything. So just be flexible with yourself and give yourself grace. Again, this is all for you, you know what I mean? So enjoy it and, you know, make sure it's like a nice memory, a kind of nice memory that you have when you look back on it.
So besides thanking the panelists, I want to everybody to give Jesus a round of applause for his amazing facilitation, for being an awesome person and jumping at the opportunity when I asked him, even though he and I didn't know each other. So I've gotten to know him a little bit over the last few weeks. And so thank him for all his hard work on this.
Well, thank you.
Is there any way I can get a copy of the PowerPoint you all presented at the beginning? By chance?
Yeah, I can make that happen for sure.
Thank you.
Yeah, and also I think the recording will be posted on the YouTube channel. If you go to Transfer Center, you'll be able to access it.